So just like any manuscript you write, right? It takes practice, it takes patience. Those are all the P's that we're throwing out. Persistence.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another You May Contributorverse. I'm Josh Munkin, co-host alongside Brenna Jenneret, and backed by podcast wizard John for another delightful conversation. A lot of you, I suspect, are going to know our guest this week because you will have read her name in the episode title, but more importantly than that, you will have seen her around all the things, from PB Chat to Kidlit Haha Week, and all the other places that will be revealed through the course of our conversation. Brittany Pomales is a delight. She has just a very warm, radiant personality, and great cool glasses, and also takes Kidlit very seriously, but also very entertainingly. I really admire her dedication to craft and the way that she considers the moves that she makes in the industry to learn and to share. So I really think you're going to enjoy the conversation. This episode is a bit of a time capsule, as we recorded this, I believe, last October 2024, before the 2025 edition of Kidlit Haha Week, and obviously before her book, It Started With a P, came out in April of this year as of episode release about a month ago. So congratulations to Brittany on the release of her book and on the successful completion of another Kidlit Haha Week. Without further ado, I really hope you enjoy the conversation that we have with Brittany. Here's Brittany's verse.
Before we get started, though, I want to say I love your glasses. They look very sparkly. Are they sparkly?
They are. They're
cool.
They're like, what is it? Pear, because you can take off the like magnet and then you can change them. So,
that is a very fancy. I am not aware of those.
Well, because sparkly is too fancy for all the time, but we are approaching holiday season, and then I figured with Kidlit, like, it'd be great for when I do like events or school visits. So I was like, we can get sparkly, but we don't have to be sparkly all the time.
Amazing. I love that you chose to wear them for the podcast.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Well, we're sparkly.
Yeah. But it'll come through in my voice. You'll know that I'm, this is very jazz.
Yeah.
Yes.
Early episode title, though. No sparkle all the time. Although that's probably not going to come through in the conversation.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I was just perusing It Started With a P. And oh my God, is it like hilarious and cute? And like those illustrations are so just perfect for
Andrew
the vibe.
An amazing job.
And I read this right? I was reading through like the description after it. There's a search and find element. Can you please tell us like everything about all of it?
So when we just even on the call with my agent, Stephanie, we were jazzed about that potential element when we would be pitching it to editors, is that even though I list a ton of P words in the text, it's by no means exhaustive. There's so many P words that are fun and that could go into the illustrations. So we were like, we totally see it like a Where's Waldo type thing, where there's just so much happening in the background that you can look at the images over and over again and then find new things. And that's exactly what ended up happening, because I know that when I listed the pets at the pier, there's a bunch of animals that have P, so you'll see penguins and poodles, which aren't in the text, but they're in the illustrations. Yeah. So it's nice to just try and pick out, which I think will also be great for schools, because if they're doing a list of P words, you can tailor it from younger to older, because there are some bigger P words, and then there are smaller.
Yes, and I love that you interwove them. Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
You didn't design that, right? In the manuscript.
The bigger and smaller words?
No,
the search and find.
The behind the scenes detail.
No, that worked out the way we hoped it would, but it wasn't necessary. It wasn't make or break it for the story, but it just would have been that extra element that I wanted chaos, so I wanted all that in the background.
Yes.
But it's not just my vision, right? It's the team's vision to bring this book to life. So if chaos was just too much for the direction that the book was going, then that was okay. It would have, the humor would have still came across in a slightly pared down version.
Clearly, it never would have worked as a Mo Willems, like just one person on the page, sort of simplicity. No, chaos makes sense for this book for sure.
I actually have a manuscript that it's still sort of being drafted, but my opening art note is an idea of like possible end papers search and find, because I had a similar kind of thing. And then three really quick things. One, I love a search and find, always have as a kid, now, anytime. I love to look for stuff. Also Spot the Difference, love them. Number two, I went as Where's Waldo this Halloween and the last 3 Halloweens because I love that costume. And 3, shout out to our friend Jolene Gutierrez, who I also saw went as Where's Waldo this Halloween. And I see you, Jolene. All of that to say, I love that you did that with It Started With a P, because it's kind of a perfect
and
catch-all.
I imagine that it's not easy to illustrate all that. So
right.
Andrew did phenomenal. I couldn't even keep track because I know that items are being removed. So I knew that was going to be creating a task, because then after certain things are removed, they kind of can't be in the picture anymore. So
totally.
Shout out Andrew Foley. Andrew's full name
Andrew
for the
Joyner.
recording.
He is a New York Times bestselling illustrator, but he's also an author illustrator for some titles. He did the Dr. Seuss's Horse Museum, and then some of his author illustrator titles is like The Pink Hat. So some of those might be familiar.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Very
I'm
cool.
not familiar with that. What does that mean? Dr. Seuss's Horse Museum.
So Dr. Seuss doesn't obviously still write and illustrate his own books, so other people will do it for him. And so it still has Dr. Seuss's name in the title, right? Dr. Seuss's, because it's his, I don't know,
IP.
It's like the brand.
And then it's the Horse Museum is the book itself. So then Dr. Seuss's The Horse Museum.
Oh, okay. I thought
And
it
then
was
he
like
was
a
illustrator
real
on
thing.
that.
And yeah, okay.
It would be fun, right? If there really was a Horse Museum. But I mean,
would be.
Imagine the
Dr.
look of the
Seuss.
horses in that museum is the thing that I'm trying to get at.
I'm getting like Willy Wonka vibes. Like, I think it would be very weird and a little
I don't
creepy.
think it'd be like real horses.
No,
So
right.
yeah,
it
we
would
could-
have to be like
Unless
a
it's a
wax
special
museum,
appearance of a real
kind
horse.
of a-
and then-
yeah, right. Something. It's weird. It's weird. We're putting it out into the universe. Maybe something will.
We talked to
Amazing.
Alistair Haim in an episode that we have yet to air, that his writing Dr. Seuss, I almost said Doctor Who. Anyway, yes. All that is to say, that has nothing to do with your work. Let's talk more about your work. What
That's
I mean,
okay.
what
I'm always
connection?
happy to chat how great Andrew is, so
Yeah.
that's all fine.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what connection or involvement did you have with him, or direction did you give him, or what were the conversations like? Because this is it's an art-heavy book in the sense that it's very involved.
Believe it or not, him and I have not communicated.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Other than a comment like on Instagram saying like, "Hey, like I'm so excited we're working together." So we've said hi, but the actual working on the manuscript we did not work together. I know that Claire Tattersfield, who's the editor, was my in between, and then I know, is it Sophia Ebb? Oh, I might have to look. I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
That's okay. Yeah.
Because Sophia and Sophie make me want to confuse the two, and then was the art designer, so I know that she worked with him on that side, and they did really great about bridging the two between us. I had some art notes on there. I don't know how much went through, of course, because sometimes editors might wipe something out if they're trying to make sure I don't influence. So my art notes were basically just to convey that there's chaos in the background, because they didn't have to be followed to a T by any means, like in the
To a P.
sort of yeah.
Nailed it.
There's the example of his previous overreactions, and I had some different examples of how the items got rid of, or how he got rid of the items, and those changed. So I don't know if those art notes were there or not, but what is on the page now is far better than what I imagined, which is why they say don't overdo it with the art notes. But I just wrote something so that they understood the chaos I was going for, the exaggeration of, because the actual text doesn't display that. It just says, he banned this, and then that helped him visualize how chaotic we were trying to go with that. So those were there. So I know that those probably definitely helped, since we didn't chat one-to-one there. And then the only thing I after art was done is that at one point Cedric's underwear had polka dots when they get rid of the pants, and polka dots start with a P, which I didn't catch right away, actually. I kind of had to sit on it, and my brain at 2 a.m. one night was like, oh my goodness, those are polka dots. Yes. I was like, oh my goodness, those are polka dots. They can't be polka dots. So I emailed Claire. I thought she was probably going to think I was insane. And I was like, oh my goodness, just realized these are polka dots. They have to change.
Cedric has to change his underwear.
Yeah. So now there's stripes in the book. So
awesome.
Pinstripes, though.
I was just going to say that. Get them out. I love, was this part of your, was it an art note, or did you, maybe just visualize it, or was this an Andrew thing, that the king is quite small? Because it gives me Cedric, the tiny king vibes. And also my book has a king, and originally I had said in my art note I wanted him small, and we went in a different way for other reasons that it's not about my book, so I won't go into it. But what was that your inkling to go small?
That wasn't. That was all Andrew. He did the character designs, it may have been with the team, but I drew from my experience of older comedy like Abbott and Costello, and there's even that difference between them physically. So that portrayed well, and it worked well visually because he captured it right. You have one that's shorter and stout, and one that's taller, just sort of like Abbott and Costello and some of those other duos that you see from the black and white days.
It's perfect. I mean, that's like an age-old, tiny person, big tantrum. Like that, I feel like that's always funny.
Gideon in Gravity Falls is
totally. Unless, I was going to say, the caveat is, unless you're a parent, then it is not funny. So, but in King's royalty, yes, funny.
Yes, in picture books where we don't have to deal with it before bedtime.
Yes, when it's somebody else's problem, yes, then hilarious.
Where did this story come from?
It was a Story Storm idea. So I was in my 30 days of throwing things at my notebook, hoping something would stick. And at that point, it didn't look like this version, of course. But I did have the idea of it was called The Land of Nothing at that point. That was just the phrase that I wrote in the notebook. I didn't have a full story yet. I like mixing words that sound strange or peculiar and then kind of trying to figure out what would make that. So I was like, well, what would make someone get rid of everything? Just absolutely everything in the land, because I pictured just nothing, which is kind of like when he's on the island and there's nothing. And I was like, what could possibly get rid of? And at that point, it was an adult king, and he had a nightmare that his life was in danger at that point. And so he got rid of everything. And then we put it through a child-friendly lens, and it is now a child king, and his nightmare is that his birthday party will be ruined, which is very big deal for not just children. I wouldn't want my birthday party ruined. But then again, I'm very much King Liam is very much based off of me. Exaggerated, of course, but based off of me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's perfect. And I love to, like, both our stories have royalty and birthdays, which is like, I feel like that's a very niche sort of like double layer to have.
Well, and they're completely different too.
They
but
are.
Like in the best way, right? It's
yes.
Testament to the fact that you can have the same prompt amongst writers and the stories will be completely different and both have their own room in the world, because I know some people are constantly, when you're newer to the game, worried about maybe an idea being stolen or kind of making sure you're sharing with the right people. So I mean,
totally
it's real.
Precious, right?
Yeah.
To use a P word. I'm gonna do my best to keep that up.
And how did you? So can we sort of do the timeline of the book? So what year of Story Storm did you come up with the idea, and then how long did it take, from here to publication? And sub question: is this the manuscript that you got your agent with, or had you been agented previously?
Gotcha. It was a 2020 Story Storm, and it comes on in 2025. Okay. So we're looking at a 5-year timeline.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, but that's so I'm like excited, but only because it's so helpful to hear. Like it's not just going to happen overnight. Like everybody has to go through the slog. So just hang in there.
But a lot happened in between that time. Yes, patience. A lot happened in that time, so it's great. So the initial idea went into my notebook in 2020, and I wrote just a really rough draft that my critique partners saw, and then I put it in a drawer because I wasn't writing humor at that time. I was not a humor writer at that point in my journey.
I have questions. We'll put a pin in that and circle back. Okay.
And so part of me didn't have some of the skills that I needed there, nor the confidence to work on that story. So it got put away. Totally fine. And in 2021, I got the PB Chat mentorship with Dev Petty. But right before I got it, I knew I was close because more materials were requested. And so I had to look through and see what I had that was humor, which wasn't very much because I wasn't exactly a humor writer at the time yet. And so I had worked on this a little bit more. I had sent it to Rate Your Story, who had suggested me having a more cohesive element, which is where the party came from, so that all the items were kind of tied to something. And it was a fabulous feedback. Worked really well, as we can tell because it was published, so it worked really well. And I added the party, and then it became one of the stories that me and Dev worked on when I got the mentorship. So we worked on it in 2021. It went into the showcase, but it didn't, other than it got a few requests, but that's not how it got published. So that's 2021. In 2022, in July, I got representation by Stephanie Molina from Ladderbird Literary Agency. And this was the story that I was querying because with it having gone through the mentorship and the showcase, and I just believed in it so much that I was like, if you don't love this story, you're not the agent for me.
Yeah.
Which I know that you can have further stories that could attract an agent's attention, but I was just so much on this story. I was like, if you don't love this one, then we can't work together.
Yeah.
That's
a great filter.
I was really stuck on it.
Do you still feel that way?
About this story or just in general?
Well, just like not about this story specifically, but do you feel like that so closely encapsulates your vision and your voice as a writer at this point? Because the question I was going to ask is, I mean, had you redefined yourself or moved more firmly into humor at that point?
Yes.
In a way that made you feel like this super represents the sort of stuff that I want to produce in the future.
Yes, I completely agree. And then also there's certain stories where you write them and you like them, but they say, this is the story of my heart. Of course, this one's not of my heart. I call it of my funny bone. But it felt to the same equivalent of someone else's story of their heart, but just of my funny bone. So I was like, if this humor doesn't work, then we're going to have other clashes down the line with other stories because this is a similar humor I'm going to keep using in different ways because it's just the humor that's in ground. I used to watch Abbott and Costello with my dad when I was young, and you can't get any more ingrained in me because that's where it started, between that and I Love Lucy and so on.
Amazing.
So,
you're really classic sensibilities.
Yeah.
Maybe it comes with the classic humor thought back then, but because not everything's done that same way now.
So okay, so you weren't writing humor. So what were you writing before you started writing humor, and then what made you sort of switch? Because you got the Dev Petty mentorship. I mean, that's like, number one, I mean, she's incredible, but she is best known for humor. So it makes me think, you must have switched a pretty big switch to be like, oh, okay, this is exactly what I'm going for. Because you do have, like, I forget how PB Chat was set up, but you do have to pick specific mentors to sub to, right? So you sought her out. Okay.
Yeah. So at first I was writing SEL, so your social emotional learning, because a lot of the webinars I started when I was learning to write Kidlit and picture books are geared towards those type of stories, which is not a problem. There just wasn't as many humor classes available. Like now, Justin Colon has his humor mechanics class, which wasn't obviously available back then, right, when I was first starting. So I started writing what I was being taught. So I started writing SEL stories, and they weren't connecting with others as much. I mean, my critique partners were, always helpful and enjoyed my stories, but the wider traction, there weren't really gathering anything. So the first, because PB Chat started their mentorship before that, 2021 was, I believe, their third year. And I tried previously, and I tried with SEL stories. And then the second year I tried with still an SEL, but it was a little bit of bilingual. There was some Spanish words in there because I'm bilingual. So I just was trying to figure out where in SEL I might fit. And then the third year, after not having traction those previous 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm going to try humor. I had a few humor ideas in my Story Storm notebook and kind of tried to flesh some of those out. And I had one about a ghost haunting a bathroom that I thought was funny enough to maybe be humor. Like maybe I can do this thing. Like maybe I can write funny. And then that's what made me have some boost of confidence to try for humor mentorship that year. And then I don't think anybody was more surprised than me when I got the Dev Penny. Because again, I was just starting to like be like, okay, maybe I can write humor. And then kind of went from there. And in 2022, after I signed with my agent, right, that just helped further build onto that humor confidence. And we signed in July. And then we sold in October. So it sold in October of 2022. But because it's
Just
sort of
3
the
months.
end of the year,
Yeah.
it kind of was just a little over 2 years in publishing timeline because it would have been pushed a season. So instead of 2 years, it was 2.5 years from deal to publication when it comes out in April, on April 8th.
Wow.
So that's
amazing.
the long timeline. The long timeline.
Yeah.
5 years.
So here is what I was thinking when you were like, oh, I was just getting into humor. Like I didn't actually, I hadn't been writing this way. So, because there are several other things I want to talk to you about besides your books because you are so involved in the Kidlit community. So number one, based on this revelation about your humor writing, how did you decide and like want to start the Kidlit Haha Week? Because I saw that come out and was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then my second thought was, well, first I was like, that's amazing. I can't believe nobody's thought to do this before. And secondly, I was like, I want to be involved. I'm like, how can I get involved? That sounds awesome. So yeah, so let's just start there because I love that you are doing that and that you're sort of, because your book has sold and has been announced, you're in this position where you are sort of situated as a humor writer, even though, like many of us, you write other things. So it just goes to show that like it does make a difference, what you sort of debut with, and that can be sort of a strategy. So anyways, yeah, so tell me everything.
It was completely self-serving. I wish someone else had started it and nobody had, so then I finally did it. I had been sitting on the idea for at least a year, too shy
Just waiting.
just
waiting
shy,
for somebody else to do it.
hoping somebody else would. But what really cemented it was the Funny Women of Kidlit with Writing Barn. They had 2 years in a row, which I was totally jazzed. I attended both. And then they didn't have it. And I was like, what do you mean you're not going to have it?
I know. Then they did the pitch and play. I was like, okay, but can we do the Funny Women confab instead?
It was not. It was. I was just in my soul. It was not okay that event was no longer happening. It just was not okay.
Agree.
So I was like, okay, well, I just can't not have something. I need something. So I had already, because I really like Story Storm, and there was just no way that me as one person could do something to the caliber of a confab. So I was like, okay, well, let's just sort of hybrid this, and I can do a week. Works out well by doing it April Fool's Day week because that's also like humor month. So that all works out. And I had teased the idea in October on Twitter, and then people were like, yes, we want this. And I'm like, all right, well, I've got 6 months to get things gathered up. And fortunately, I had already had a list of potentials just from my mentorship with Dev, and then Claire, who's my editor, is also a New York Times bestselling author of Q-Pig, and so that worked out well, especially because it's great to hear an editor/writer's perspective versus just a writer's perspective on editing, because I feel like some of the funny comes out when you're editing. Because you might have a really funny concept, but the execution is important. So that's how Kidlit Haha came, because I want to read them. In fact, I was geeking out while reading them before anybody else reads them, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I wanted for myself, like as a writer, what I needed. Because like I mentioned, there just, when I started, wasn't a lot of humor resources out there, especially free resources out there for writing humor. And there's so many people that don't think they can, like I started, don't think they can, when they definitely can. It just like any manuscript you write, right? It takes practice, it takes patience. Those are all the P's that we're throwing out.
It's just another skill to learn. Yeah, like timing, page turns, like that kind of thing, or just like sort of like physical comedy, which is, sort of like art notes in your manuscript.
And it takes some of the rules and throws them out the window. So my character doesn't particularly learn their lesson, they have an epiphany, but then they go right
Hmm.
back to exactly how they've always been. And that
Yes,
is not advice when you're watching specifically SEL focus or lyrical writing
Like
totally.
stories.
growth mindset stuff. Yeah, exactly.
The
Right.
focus is that usually the character grows and learns their lesson, and he doesn't.
I
And
love when the characters learn nothing because I'm just like that's my kid. That is so like totally kid centric. You know what I mean? Like
even into adult, we're still learning some of
fair.
our stuff. So it takes time to
Yeah.
grow. It does not take
Yeah.
one picture book to grow unless
Yes.
it's posed at, at the end of someone and we don't actually see some of the pre-work there, but it takes a lot more than that to grow sometimes. And that's okay.
Totally.
Hey, let's take a quick break for a couple of good reviews for books we like. Brenda's review for this week is for I Rock My Hair by friend of the pod and trusted CP or critique partner Angel Tate. This important book based on the Crown Act is beautiful, empowering, and the rhyme scheme keeps kids engaged and entertained. Angel is a true talent, and you do not want to miss this book that encourages kids not only to be proud of who you are, but to treat others with respect. Shout out to Angel, who, aside from Brenda's words, I think is also an awesome, amazing person and a great creator. John's review for this week is Being a Dog, A Tale of Mindfulness by Maria Gianferrari, illustrated by Pete Oswald. Shows kids how to pause, sniff the air, and just be like a dog. It's a tail-wagging guide to stay present with goofy charm and pup-approved wisdom on every page. John gives this 5 whole body wags out of 5. And my review, astute listeners might pick up on this, I suppose, is something that we did about a month ago. Brenna reviewed and turned us on to it. It's a duplicate. We don't do that super often, but this book merits revisiting for another take and another review from me. The Bakery Dragon by concept artist and author-illustrator Devin, Elle, Kurtz got a review from Brenna in April, a month ago, chronologically, and then since then, this book put our house in a bit of a stranglehold. Ember truly is the cutest dragon you are likely to ever see, and besides that, it's a really cute story about finding your place and your skill and your people and bread. Man, when I say that this book lovingly portrays bread, you'll know it when you check it out. While I take issue with the unresolved plot line around how they're going to redistribute all that gold, and again, you'll know it when you see it, it's an adorable and warm book with tons of rereadable detail. So good. If you would like to support the podcast, I suggest you do so in the traditional manner, which is to hit up our Linktree, linktree.com/verseshow. Check out everything we got going on there. And now, without further ado, we're going to go back to our conversation with Brittany.
I love that.
Let's talk more about some of your other funny stuff, like that came up. I don't know how comfortable you are sharing your ideas, but we've talked about ideas are not too precious. But I wonder what else came up, considering how you've, over the last several years, discovered your voice, your humorous voice, and made that P for personal connection with like those more classic sensibilities, which is a very specific type of humor. P for physical type of humor.
Well, I know that I've heard in the past sometimes that it's hard to, if you think in cartoon moving pictures and you have to capture it in still, it can be difficult. So sometimes you have to kind of think about that when you're writing, but I don't think it's impossible. I think it's teaming up with the right illustrator to capture that, because someone who has any sort of animation background is used to taking motion and putting it into a still image, because it's all those still images that create the motion. And you just find the right point in that motion to have that still image and illustration. So for that reason, when I was considering this book before it had gone out, I knew that it wasn't something that I could really send to a little press, or a small press, but even though I highly respect them and love them and work for one, I just knew that this specific book with this physical humor needed a lot. It needed a lot. And that's okay. That's okay. Each book is different. You have, we were talking about the Mo Willems where you don't have much going on in the background, and it's a bit more of a simplistic style, and this was not, at least in my vision from the beginning, this was not going to be that. This was definitely going to be something that needed a lot going on in the background, and you have to be able to balance the foreground and the background and not lose things. And I know that I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but a illustrator that's got all the experience would be able to do that. And I just knew that that would come with some experience.
Yeah, and this is not, I mean, it's, well, yes, that's the point, the end there. This is not to say that you can't achieve that with small presses necessarily, but your point is really valid. This sort of thing requires so much, I mean, yes, probably to a degree monetary investment in an illustrator's time, who's going to have to really take their time to get these illustrations right. But then also to your point, I mean, expertise to know how to physically construct these things in a kinetic way that is continuous. I mean, it's a lot to coordinate for sure. Right.
And I imagine even just the art direction, because as an art direction, you'd have to know a lot about how the art works in movement and still, as we were talking about as well, because even though you heavily rely on and hope the illustrator can carry most of that in their drawing, I'm sure there was back and forth between them about the images.
Yeah.
Was there, well, and again, I don't know. I don't know if you can answer this because of what you've already said about, lack of sort of direct communication with Andrew. But what I do wonder is the degree to which there was intentionality, yes, with the kinetic nature of the book, but intentionality with making this feel like a more, not an Abbott and Costello sort of vibe, but making it feel much closer to what we would think of as like a classic picture book.
Some of that I know started with when Claire acquired and the team talked about it, because I know that they had mentioned that that's how they saw it when they seeked out Andrew with the manuscript, and it worked out that he loved it and he was on board with it, so that worked out well. So I know some of it came before him and his style was seeked out because they felt he can accomplish what they were looking for in that sort of classic style, which was different than how I had originally pictured it. I pictured it more early 2000s cartoon because I just very much like the humor in like Fairly Odd Parents and things like that. So I very much saw I saw it differently at first. And when they told me this was the direction, it took me a second to just think about it. I mean, just to be like, okay, am I cool with that? Like, does that work for me? And it did, which is fine. It was just a different direction, but it's still accomplishing everything. Yeah. It's still accomplishing everything that I want to get through. But I definitely think it's important to take that moment and think about it, because you've worked so hard to get to where you were, and just making sure that everything that I wouldn't end up in a spot that just felt uncomfortable or untrue to me. So I kind of took, the evening to just be like, okay, let's make sure everything kind of is still jiving. And Andrew on his main page has like a big banner, and there's animals, and they're all, if it's still the same website, I haven't checked it lately, they're on a street walking, and it looks to me like those animals could start walking at any moment to me. And that's exactly what made me go, okay, I think this will work out well, because I think if you captured that moment to the point where I feel like they're going to start moving, then you're going to do an amazing job with this book, because you're going to feel the same way about the illustrations, and it started with a P. You're going to feel like I could see this start coming to life.
Can confirm, by the way, the banner is still up.
The banner's still up. Great. So if you're checking out his website,
amazing,
you'll see the animals that he's got drawn there.
Okay, so I have a question that's sort of taking a hard left, but not entirely, because in my brain they're connected. So I want to talk about your involvement. Yeah, we'll get there. I want to talk about your involvement in PB Party this year, because, and this is where the connection is, because when I saw that you were announced as a judge, that tipped the scales for me to actually participate, only because, not that PB Party isn't amazing, Mindy, you're amazing, people who are listening, I think the contest is awesome. I just don't always see it as a good place to showcase humor. That's not always the thing that is sort of prioritized. It feels like there's a lot more like SEL, emotional, cultural books that come out of that contest, which is totally great. It just didn't feel like a good fit for me. But when I saw that you had been announced as a judge, I was like, oh, I'm like, Brittany writes funny stuff. That'll be amazing. Maybe my manuscript will, do okay. So anyways, I just want to hear all about PB Party and how you got involved and all the stuff.
Yeah, I was a finalist in 2022 for a humor manuscript.
Really?
Yeah.
This is more exciting. Slash like surprising. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't include that in my 5 years
your
because I was
bio,
thinking
yeah.
about
Right.
it started with a piece specifically in those 5 years that I didn't
Yeah.
branch off. I had sent
It's a
a
different
different humor
manuscript.
manuscript to PB Party in 2022, so this would be right
Awesome.
after my PB Chat mentorship.
Okay.
And it was a finalist. It got some requests, but did not get picked up, and I was still kind of going with it started with a P, so I didn't query that story widely. It just went to those who requested it, and then I continued full steam ahead with it started with a P.
Okay.
But
Wow.
like, I'm
awesome.
going to show you
Just
tip the
because you shouldn't put
scales.
all your eggs in the same basket, right? So I had I was trying to work with
sure.
a second humor manuscript as well in case the first one didn't go where I wanted it to go, right? So I was a PB Party finalist in 2022, and then Mindy needed help with some of the Zoom with all the questions, which
Oh yeah.
is a pretty long Zoom. Definitely worth it if you've never done PB Party before, hopping in on that Zoom. But there's usually a lot of questions, and then there's tips from judges, and so there's a lot of slides. And Sylvia helps her manage sort of like questions and guests coming in and out because there's usually over 100 people coming in and some go out. And I was just trying to help with slides to just make it a bit more of a seamless process when you have that big of a Zoom.
Totally.
And so I helped them out that year with that, and that worked out well. That when they had a spot for a judge, Mindy had reached out to me and said, hey, we worked so well, you, me, and Sylvia, while we were doing those Zooms, and it was super helpful. And I know how like invested you are in things. I wanted to offer this. If you can't do it, no big deal, but I just wanted to offer it. And I wanted to say yes right away, but I wanted to think about it because I know I wanted to be a judge more than 1 year if I said yes, right? So I wanted to make sure that I could be a continuous judge and not like, yes, I can do it this year, and then sort of leave Mindy not hanging because I'm sure she'd find someone else to fill it, but the next year or so,
Yeah.
because most of the judges have been judges for years. So I'm like, okay, I knew at that point already my book would be coming out in 2025. So I'm like, okay, let me see, make sure I can handle it because PB Party is the beginning of the year, and my book and Kill It Haha Week would be basically right after. So I'm
This is
like,
so
okay.
responsible of you. I would have been like, yeah, sure, I got you, I'm in. And then the aftermath would have been like, I have a lot to do.
What have I
That's
committed
fine.
myself to?
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I knew that we were planning to grow our family. So even though we weren't expecting our second child yet at that time, I knew it was something that we were planning for. So I'm like, okay, with all that, then I told Minnie, I just want to think about it for a day or two and make sure that I can commit fully before I say yes or no. And she was like, yeah, no worries. And she answered a few questions I had as far as time commitment, because I was concerned at how long it was going to take me to read everything, right? Because it's a lot.
I mean, there's so many
fun, but it's a lot.
submissions. It's yeah.
And so then we kind of hashed out how things worked in the past for them, and then this year they were having an extra week, which definitely was what allowed me to be able to say yes, because without that extra week I don't think I'd be able to have read it. I was basically reading at night while my daughter was falling asleep, so I was reading all submissions at midnight. So every submission was read at sometime between midnight and probably 2 a.m.
Yes, because I saw a lot of the judges posted this year, which was like very cool, like posting in real time. Like I know Sylvia had I read a manuscript that, had these elements and I gave it a, green, whatever, which was like very exciting for participants who were like, that's totally my manuscript, like everybody's sort of like, anyways, I remember seeing you posting and just being like, yeah, like, I'm reading basically like whenever I can and just trying to fit it Anyways,
well,
amazing.
It was nice that it uses Google Workspace type things. So I was able to read across my phone or my iPad or my computer, depending on where I was, what light was in the room, what time I had, if I was in the middle of cooking or something. So that made it easy to fit it all in, because if not, it would be difficult. I know you're not reading a full manuscript, but you're still reading not exactly 1,000. There are a few that, if they're already sort of knocked out by some of the other judges, that I would then skip and come back to if I had the time, because of the algorithm type. It's not an algorithm, but the amount of likes that you need, there's already a certain point where even if I said yes, there was too many no's for me to bring it back.
I got you. Does it work in the other way as well? Like if a manuscript had already been voted yes, you could also sort of skip that one and come back around, because it's like, okay, well, that one's in already. I can kind of like leave that, or
not exactly. There are more yeses then spots in the showcase.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
So then
Okay.
after we have what Mindy calls the Duke It Out Zoom, because all the judges are on there and then fighting for certain ones over others, or seeing if
Yeah.
there's maybe something that. So sometimes maybe an illustrator might have cropped an image, but we saw on their website, because we had them link a portfolio, that it's a fuller size image. So then we might message, like if they get in, we might message them before the showcase and say, hey, is it possible to have the full image? We think that'll position better than the cropped version that you submitted,
Yeah.
or things like that. So that a lot of that discussion happens at that Zoom, which is hours long. I was not nearly on as long as everyone else because of my little one was much younger at that point. And I feel like the same would probably pop up this year as well. But that's why it's sort of important to still put in your yes, because one, if I'm not at that meeting, they still know how many yeses it has in comparison. Because just because you got a yes from a lot of yeses to get into that Zoom, it doesn't mean you're going into the showcase only because there's so many spots.
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
understand, because
right.
it would be overwhelming for any agent or editor if there were more than that. But there's always more there's always more potential than there are opportunity, unfortunately. And we try,
Yep.
people try to balance it out, right? We try and create those opportunities, but there's always more potential.
Can you give us a sense for how hard you fought for Brenna's and my stories? This may mean whether or not we continue with the rest of the interview.
So I remember both of yours. I read maybe not 1,000, but I read pretty, at least 800
A lot.
entries.
A lot.
And I remember both of yours because, Josh, yours made me laugh out loud because you had a specific joke about shepherds. I'm not going to say the joke because I don't want to ruin anything from your story, but you specifically had a line.
Callback. Yes.
I told you, I remember specifically. You had a line about shepherds that made me laugh out loud in the dark, and I was like, oh, trying to make sure I don't wake up my daughter because I did laugh out loud. No, she didn't, fortunately, but I was like, I had to stay quiet for a second to make sure that, that stir just settled right back down. And then yours, Brenna, I had never heard of that before. And I thought it was such an interesting take on a nonfiction because it kind of added that magical element to nonfiction. Yeah. And I mean, if it was up to me, but it was the team. So it wasn't just up to me. But I do remember both of yours pretty vividly.
I appreciate your very kind words because I love that story so much. Yeah, no, that's very kind of you. And actually, just piggybacking on that is sort of my inspiration for Kidlit Haha Week. Like that in parts is what I want to contribute to Kidlit Haha. I'm very excited to be a part of it. Anyways.
I know.
So
I'm excited to, I say we, there is no we, it's just me. I'm excited to have you this year as I've started to kind of, I say started because I still have more emails to send, but I've started to cement the list of who's going to be joining in because I have an idea of people I want to reach out to other than you and Steph Campisi, who's already was on my list from
cool.
Two flipping all-stars.
I love Steph Campisi. Yeah, we're great friends. That's amazing. And then everybody
else would be a cold reach out to because I had already previously spoken to both of you last year just because with only doing 5 blog posts it's kind of hard to get a lot and also variety in those 5 days, but I'm trying because I want it to be something for everyone. So this year I'm hoping to get illustration and maybe I know Steph Campisi writes across the board, so I know that will probably help.
Very prolific, as
far as different age groups, but depending on where things fall, trying to balance things out across maybe an MG and writer and things like that. So
totally, I was so excited to see how it all comes together. Yeah. So again, I want to pivot one more time because like I said, you're so involved. I want to talk all about Little Press and how you got connected with them and how it's going and sort of what you're in charge of over there. Also, sub connection, you mentioned your story earlier. Lynn Marie is in charge of that. And I know she's also been published by them. And I also just saw she's now announced as a new acquiring editor for seasonal picture books specifically. So just a lot of threads here, sort of pooling together.
In the world.
I know. So anyways, tell us all of the things.
Yeah, I think this is what happens when you do nothing else and spend a lot of time on Kidlit social media.
Totally.
Probably way more than I should. But I guess part of me still craving when we had PB chat, weekly chats. So I'm just still on there so often, even if I'm not commenting or participating. I'm still just observing the community a lot.
Totally.
And
Same. Yeah.
at the time, so almost a year ago, because it was December 2023 that I joined with them. So Little Press had put out a call that they were looking for part-time freelance marketing for their catalogs, backlist and forthcoming. And although I didn't specifically have book marketing skills, I had previously done marketing for an animal hospital for 4 years. So promoting like health and services for cats and dogs, which is also marketing something you're passionate about, right? So you're tapping into that similarly to when you're tapping into the books. And I had also done marketing and community management for Write Academy, which is a UK-based online writing courses.
Yeah.
So they have like write short stories, they have write romance, right? So they have, but writing their storybooks is sort of the bigger part of their company. So it worked well to have a kidlit person there. And then I would do Zooms and things for them. So all those skills translated when I had applied to Little Press. And Michelle had announced that she was hiring one, but split the position into two because Julie also joined the team at the same time as I did, because it was more than just, after kind of figuring everything out, it was more than just social media marketing and email newsletters. There's also booking events with bookstores and libraries, and there's a whole lot because it's essentially marketing and publicity, and it's really hard to mix marketing and publicity together, although there is some overlap because they both have so much to them, right? Media and events,
Totally.
and then as well as creating content for it online. So I do a lot more of the marketing. Julie does a lot more of the publicity, and then we share certain tasks overlapping. So we are currently working on like award submissions because a lot of awards have end of the year deadlines. It's for 2025 lists. So that could be, sometimes you'll see state lists from the state or libraries, and then some of the state awards, and then some of the more national awards. And then we do have some Canadian illustrators. So we're looking at Canada awards as well. So that's what we're working on now. But if you're on or sees things on their Twitter, their newsletter that comes out weekly, those are usually me. And then depends. Sometimes it fluctuates. Sometimes I'm more active when we have a new release. And then soon we'll start putting out posts of our gift guides. So if you're planning on giving any Little Press books as a gift, then you'll kind of see some things that pair well with them, which is always fun because I'm like, ooh, what can we gift with the book? So,
Yeah.
but that's how I got involved. I didn't have any previous connections with Michelle, so it just worked out well from being able to transfer the experience I had, and then the fact that also I wasn't looking for something very big as far as hours, right? Because it's very part-time at the moment, but it definitely has, there's a lot to do. There's always a lot to do because we have amazing creators. So I definitely can see the marketing and publicity team just growing.
It feels like, because we had one other interview this morning, and we were talking about just how, like, once you get published and you're sort of on the other side, it's like this extra secret job that you're like, oh wait, now I have to market and do publicity, right? It's like a lot. So like you already did all the writing and the subbing and the querying and whatever, and then you get there and you're like, oh wait, there's like all this other stuff I have to do. So
and it's not fun.
All that to say, that's really not fun. I mean, unless you like marketing. Anyways, what I mean to say though is, has this job been helpful in terms of sort of like, figuring out how to market your own book and like things you might want to, sort of pair for your own launch or release, or like what you want to do in terms of like getting the word out?
A lot of the stuff that we are doing, I had already sort of brought in with my previous knowledge. So that is what all of my marketing experience. So between, the animal hospital and this is what's going to help me with my book, and just observing other people that have come up with me, right? Because the community, you kind of all rise together, and it almost feels like different, like graduation classes. Not that there's a clear marker, but it feels like, okay, there's a few people within a certain amount of years, because publishing is a long game. It's not like a 1 year, like class of 2024. It's more like, these span of 3 years, and then there's those that are coming that have their first debut just a little bit behind me, and those that have just before me. So all of those, right? I've just keeping an eye out and asking questions of other people, because the Kidlit community is very giving. So some people who are before me, and then some people who are even if their debut is after me, doesn't mean that they're behind me in any way, because everybody has a different experience. So it's helpful to know, like, because everything varies from house to house or different company to company, and we all know that it doesn't matter how big or how small, you still have to do the marketing and things yourself. I mean, you might get a little bit more help, but there's still a lot you have to advocate for yourself in that. So it's kind of nice to see what other people are doing, what other people have heard or have access to, because sometimes your publisher might provide like some sort of education that you're not sharing that education per se, but you might be able to share a tip that you learned. You're like, oh, you know what recently came across me that was really helpful for me, and then they can pass along that tip or trick, which is helpful because why invent the wheel? And do all that work if someone's already been there.
Totally. Yeah.
To what do you attribute your success? And there's a reason that I'm asking that question, because it seems I'm getting the vibe, explicitly, implicitly, that you say yes to a lot of things. You say yes in a very responsible way, in a well-considered way. But I guess I'm just trying to get your reflections on all these things that you're involved in. Is it because you have an earnest passion and the time to put into it? Are you careful or intentional about how your state of mind and your perspective on your own work and what you can contribute? Or I guess just how do you make it work?
Two parts. One is because you never know when the opportunity will arrive or what the opportunity is going to look like, is trying to be ready for that opportunity, which isn't something that just came to me. It's something I heard out of podcast a long time ago, and I don't remember from where.
It was ours, but I'm sure.
Totally.
And it was talking about being ready for those opportunities instead of just, because it can be easy to be like, oh my goodness, the woe is me, right? Things aren't coming my way. But then it might so happen that the reason why things aren't coming your way is because you might not be prepared for them, or they pass you by because you weren't prepared for them. So trying to be prepared in the time. So trying to still, I mean, we're always learning, so we're always taking classes even though we've been published. So things like that, or still perusing opportunities even if you think that you might not be a fit, just try anyway and see if it works out. So being prepared for potential opportunities, especially because you don't know when they'll come or what they'll be. And then the other part is sort of being okay with and working with the season you're in, because sometimes you have the ability to write a bunch of manuscripts and then you work really hard, and your writing might grow significantly in that time because you had the ability. And then you run into a season like me right now where I might on a good year write 3 polished manuscripts that I then send to my agent all year. And with the way picture books work, I mean, your odds are better if you're writing more, because the more stories you have, then the more likely they'll get to submission, and most likely you'll get an editor. So realistically, with me only sending Stephanie 3 that get polished, I'm still kind of working on or relying on some of the vault from when I had the season to be able to write a bit more. And that applies to more than just writing. That applies to your marketing. Think ahead. I know that I am expecting a child in January. So I know that January and February are going to be very, very not writing related months for me. I'm not going to be doing writing. I'm not going to be marketing. I'm not going to even be working, right? Because I will be focusing on family at that time. So I'm trying to accomplish as much as I can before, because as we know, in April, my book comes out, or our book comes out. So it's a quick timeline, and I know that that's where my seasons are going to be. So I'm trying to just be, my personality type is very strategic, so it's easier said than done, but I try and just be a little bit strategic about what I know. So I know for sure that these things are on my timeline. What can I do around the timeline so that I'm not either in a spot where I can't do anything and I didn't prepare and do anything before that. So I think a little bit of both of those things, seasons, and then trying to prepare for when those seasons come and go, I guess.
The seasons thing resonates with me a lot, because I'm sure that I, like a lot of people who listen to this, probably feel impatient with whatever the season is. So that there's a degree of reconciling that we as creators have to do to get to that very healthy and well-adjusted Brittany Pomales state of mind, where
totally.
You can be strategic.
Years of being a
exactly.
kid,
and therapy or whatever, but
yeah,
it's an interesting tension of stoking the fire of wanting to continue creating while also acknowledging that our lives are always crazy and moving at different breakneck paces, and we cannot always do everything that we want to do, despite the fact that, gosh, I would have loved to be published 2 years ago, but there's no amount of rushing that would make that happen. It happens on its own time. And again, it's a really well-adjusted way to
And publishing is
think about it.
so slow that it will still be there. It may look a little different because things do change, but it will still be there. So I know that. And it happens to me too. I get impatient where I'm like, I have not sold a second book, so I don't have a second one on the calendar at the moment. And it is very easy to start thinking, okay, I'm already at a 2-year gap between now and whenever or something. And it's very easy to get, but publishing's still going to be there. So even if there's a 3-year gap, it's still going to be there.
No, we will be celebrating, by the time this comes out, we will be celebrating your second baby and your second book deal.
Amazing.
If so, it would just be so coincidental because the original deal came the same week that my daughter was born. So
symmetry is coming your way.
Come on.
The same things happens, I'm in trouble because there's only so many children I'm having.
Yeah, right. If that's the thing that's pushing the books forward, oh boy.
Yeah, then we're in trouble. But if that's the kismet that needs to happen for right now, I'll take the boost in the universe's blessings. But hopefully that's not. Hopefully that's not the thing.
Yeah, just acquire pets every year, and then you'll get them.
Totally. My
Do
gosh.
fish count? Just start acquiring fish.
Yeah, totally. Or kittens.
Go get 20 of them. Mm-hmm.
Totally. Just get a whole bunch. We are up to the hour, Brittany, and this has been just it went by so fast because I feel like I just had so many things to say. We know each other on social media, but we've never actually chatted. So this was really nice to actually sit and chat with you in real time and just talk all things books. So thank you for joining us.
And you don't hear me talk that often, but I hear you guys talk all the time. So I hear you guys talk all the time. So you're
well, thank you for listening.
You're well in my life there with
we appreciate
with the episodes.
That. We hope to accompany you through many sleepless nights to come in the months ahead.
It happens. Right? It definitely happens.
Yeah.